O que acende a sua vontade de começar algo? Tem uma faísca em você que te chama para empreender, investir, dar novos rumos para sua vida. E para todos os seus começos, você pode contar com Santander Select. Um banco mais pessoal, mais próximo, mais humano. Um time de especialistas com olhar atento para cada momento da sua vida. Porque você sabe, só quem já deu muitos passos está pronto para continuar começando. Santander Select. Começa em você, começa agora.
Our next live taping is this Saturday at Metro Bar DC. I will be joined by the DC Office of Planning's Anita Cozart and Ebony Dumas to chat about their new podcast, District Crossroads. We'll dive into a project focused on the future of the North Capitol Street corridor. The taping starts at 2 p.m. It's this Saturday, July 13th. RSVP on our website. We'll see you there. Today on CityCast DC, for decades, Prince George's County has been a top draw for Black professionals looking for the suburban life, and they're often leaving DC to do so. But lately, its demographics have been changing in interesting ways. Greater Washington's Olubusayo Shabi has been covering it, and we asked her to come tell us about her work. Today is Thursday, July 11th. I'm Michael Schaefer, and here's what DC is talking about. Olubusayo Shabi, you are the author of a really thoughtful piece in Greater Washington. That headline is Prince George's County losing its status as the region's Black promised land? So let me tell you where I came in. PG County, in my childhood, in the 80s, 90s, 70s, it kind of had this air of hope around it. It was like the place in the region for Black residents to move, to buy houses, to live this sort of cul-de-sac-y suburban dream. It was once the wealthiest Black majority county in the country. It's not the same anymore. Can you talk me through some of that history? How did it become a haven for the Black middle class in the 2000s, and what has happened since?
Absolutely. So, around the 60s, it was a very different time in PG County. It was still a majority white county. And from there, what kind of happened is, people wanted to have that home. They wanted that American dream, and PG County offered the ability to do that while still living near District of Columbia, which is where they were working, federal government jobs. So as a result, what ended up happening is, people took a chance on the county. They started moving there, and then as the 70s and 80s progressed, like you mentioned, there was an influx of Black introduction into the county, and similarly white flight at the same exact time. As a result, what we've seen is by the 90s, I think it was a predominantly Black county at that time. But by the 2010s, all of that progress started to undo itself. There was the housing crisis, the financial crisis. We see negative equity where the mortgages of Black homeowners and the value of their homes it's in the negatives. And so there is a lot of foreclosures happening. There are investors coming in and kind of snatching up homes and removing it away from Black homeowners. So it was really a transition that the county has always seen in terms of this influx of people, but then now an influx of problems at the same time.
Yeah, it was interesting. When I was a kid, PG had had sort of a white Southern sort of inflection. Larry Hogan's father was the Republican congressman from PG. And then so many people from D.C., so many African Americans from D.C. were moving there. The joke was they called it Ward 9. But there was like a real air of, this is, like you wrote, the promised land. Where did it fall short?
See, that's a question with many answers. I'm from Prince George's County. I was raised there, and it has been a great experience for me in growing up. The county provides that Black safety net for people who have a space where they feel like they can thrive, they can be themselves, and they don't have to look over their shoulders and be concerned. But at the same time, investments in the county has always been lower than our neighborhoods. For example, a recent report by the Urban Institute showed that it's like about $17,000 per household of capital investments that go into Prince George's County. But comparatively in Loudoun County, it's $44,000. So when you think about measures like that, where there isn't enough investment resources, at some point the bubble is going to burst, and there's going to be an awakening of what's going on in PG County? Is it actually providing a promised land in terms of resources, amenities, ability to thrive in the way we once thought it was? It's not enough to just have a home. People are looking for a lot more, especially the younger generation when it comes to social amenities. And PG County has missed the mark on that so far. But I know that they're trying. But for some people, it can feel a bit too late when you have DC right there across the river, and people can go there. When you have places like in Montgomery County, like the Rio, there's housing and there's shopping and social amenities in the same vicinity.
So there was a period starting, 15 years ago or something, where a lot of suburbs tried to kind of retrofit downtown style developments into their suburbs, right? And they thought people like walking around and they like stores and they like community and so on. And very little of that was happening in PG County. And the explanation I heard, it was a sort of pop sociology explanation, was, look, a lot of the people who migrated to PG County and who are, leaders in their communities and stuff, they came up in dense neighborhoods, often in DC, and don't see that kind of neighborhood as a romantic or charming thing. Their associations with it are like, hey, I got out of there because I made it. And I don't want to start bringing in this kind of stuff where I am. Is that the right explanation, or is there something else going on in terms of who invests?
There's truth to that. There are people who have differing opinions on what they want from the county. We have a stronger senior population who may feel differently. But I will say, PG County has thought of plans of revitalizing the county, having social amenities. There's a report from about 2011 that talks about this Central Avenue Connector Trail, which I talk about in my article, of having economic development in the areas on that Blue Line corridor. So this isn't a new idea. This is an idea that they've been wanting to do, that they've seen value in, and that they think can bring investment to the county and take off reliance from the property taxes and more rely on businesses to fund the county. So this is a direction that the officials want. So I'm sure when it comes to the people in the area and the people who are leaving, it's something that should be considered. People don't want anymore to travel to have these amenities. They want them where they live. And I think PG County wants that as well. Their new slogan is "Greatness Grows Here." They want it to happen within the county.
All right, so it's almost absurd to be talking about a county. There's more than 1 million people in Prince George's County, so we're painting with like a ridiculously broad brush here. There's a whole lot of different kinds of things going on. It's a county that has areas that are rich and full of like McMansions and like Tony suburbia. There's areas that are poor and struggling. There's still some kind of rural feeling parts. But, can you paint me a picture? Who's living here now and who is coming? And more to the point of what you wrote about, who's going?
So, who's living here now? I would say there is a large senior population. The county as a whole has realized, there is a senior population that's aging and there are not enough housing resources for their needs, whether that's modifications to their homes or having senior living communities. Additionally, I would say that who's living here are families. As I mentioned, I grew up in PG County. I consider myself to be a Generation Z/millennial, depending on the day. And as a result, that's like 20 years of the county that I've spent my time there. So there's older families, there are younger families. If you think about it, a lot of the reasons why people came to PG specifically over other places was its proximity to DC. Federal jobs, that is where they were getting their income from. But now in this pandemic world where, more federal jobs are saying, you can stay home. Mayor Bowser's always wanting people to come back to work in person, but that's not the reality anymore. People can live farther away from the county. And so that these people with income, which tend to be older generations, the ones who don't care about or don't value or prioritize like these social amenities and different resources available, they're moving farther out.
And when you say social amenities, just to be clear, you mean like neighborhoods with stores and restaurants and, things.
Entertainment, things like that. Yeah. One thing about this Blue Line Corridor project is that PG County wants to make that area their sports and entertainment hub, right? And so with the FedEx field, their planned amphitheater as well, they're really trying to make it somewhere where people can have fun and do different types of activities in the same area. And not everyone is in favor of that.
This is a question I've wondered about. You've got, if you just were to look at a map of, dollar signs of where people live who have money. There are some neighborhoods in Prince George's County where there's a lot of wealth, where there's, people who have good, solid jobs and have enough money that every now and then they want to go out to dinner. It's date night, or it's my anniversary, or our child graduated, or just normal things that people want to go out to dinner for. And my friends who've lived in Prince George's County have complained to me, why I got to get in my car and drive, far away, maybe to a different county or DC. I wouldn't have to do that if I lived in, Rockville or Gaithersburg or something. Is that a matter of restaurants saying, like, I don't want to, or developers or lenders saying, it's a black neighborhood? I mean, is it sort of like a soft redlining? Or is it that the county's own policies have effectively discouraged people from opening up stuff that could, prompt other people to say, get off my lawn?
I can give you my opinion. I can't give you a fact on this answer. I would say the county continues to try to get developers to come. We do know that, redlining exists. We do know that recently the Brookings Institution did a research on how Black grocery stores, so premium grocery stores, are literally more likely to be in predominantly white areas in this Washington region than in predominantly Black areas. So we do know that there are other factors at play here. It's not just that PG County has put themselves in the position to not have developers. I will say they're moving in the right direction with this the $400 million in bonds that have been approved. They can start designing, they can start showing developers that, hey, PG County has a lot to offer. Come and take a visit and see what you can do here.
All right, so let's stop on that. The Prince George's County leaders have come up with a plan to revitalize the county. There's a whole lot of pieces, but I understand it's mostly centered on a vision of what it could be like in 2030.
Very ambitious plans, I would say. And that is where my concern lies, really, if I'm being honest, because like you mentioned, that's 7 years away. When they first developed these plans, it was 2019. The pandemic was not a thing. No one knew that was coming. And so for us to continue to focus on 2030, knowing that they're already behind on specifically housing plans, it seems ambitious and somewhat unrealistic. And it's not to say that there isn't grace for that. The pandemic changed a lot for everyone. Doesn't matter the county or the location. So I am curious to see what actually will occur, what will materialize by 2030, and what that means for housing residents. Because some people can't wait. Time is precious, and people need to make decisions for their families, for their lives, for their futures. And so betting on 2030, when we know some of the plans that they have talked about have not materialized or being halted or delayed, it seems too good to be true.
So one of the things that is part of this vision is they've renamed the metro stop Downtown Largo. So the idea is this town, Largo, is going to be treated as sort of a destination, a place with amenities, a place you can walk around, a place that you want to head. Do you think that's realistic? It's going to become a place where people want to live, to hang, to work?
Well, before there was Downtown Largo, there was Largo Town Center, and there was the Boulevard. And the Boulevard is no longer exists. All that's left of it is the theater, Chick-fil-A, and a couple other restaurants there. So, it's hard to believe that they can do it right this time. There is a great anchor, which is the hospital, which can show developers, show businesses that, there's opportunity here because there are people in this area. But it's hard to say whether or not it will truly become a reality. And it's hard to say when.
So one of the other dynamics that has happened, and maybe this is for people seeking the more like rural, suburban, exurban kind of life, is a lot of folks who might have moved to PG are migrating to like Charles County, further into southern Maryland. Why is that happening? And is it happening at your county, at PG's expense?
So one thing is space. People want more space. And so, because of the pandemic, everyone's had to stay home. You start to rethink what matters most to you. And some people want more space to live in. Again, they don't need to be that close to DC anymore because they're now remote in their jobs. But, I also think the reason why people are choosing Charles County is because historically they have cheaper homes in comparison to areas like Montgomery County and more bang for your buck when it comes to space. I think there's also a Black population in Charles County as well. And so if you really want to say where else can I go to feel connected to the Black community and feel not othered? Charles County is your next best option. And it seems to be a fruitful option considering it's been, like the Washington Post said, that it's the largest source of newcomers.
But sort of like you're outlining two different dynamics, right? I think what I'm hearing you say is that you wish we could have more parts of Prince George's County that felt like they were kind of rich with humanity, that had people and social amenities, walking around space, ability to work and live and play in the same place. But you've also got people who are seeking, a bigger yard, more space, more, personal space, not public space. And these two things, I think, are at odds everywhere. They're at odds in the district. They're at odds in the other counties. What do you think is going to happen with Prince George's on that front?
Well, in other counties, people have those options to choose, right? In PG County, there's a lack. You can find homes that have a really big backyard in Prince George's County, but you can't find those restaurants that we were talking about if you want to have a nice dinner out. In other counties, you can have both. You can stay within your county and be able to experience both. And I think that's why Prince George's County is actually focusing on making sure that they have that social amenity representation as well.
So coming back around, your GTW piece was about, is this losing its status as the Black Promised Land of Washington area? One of the things that happened when the district began focusing more on creating more space for nightlife, for restaurants, for live, work, play in the same place was that it also started seeing gentrification. I'm not sure what's the chicken and what's the egg there, but that happened. Is that a concern for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a concern for, my parents' home that's in the area. It's a concern for residents who live there. And it's a concern for the county as well. They know that, when these things happen, the people who once could live there can no longer afford to do that. And that's why they have these affordable housing initiatives that they're trying to do. One of that is preserving affordable units that already exist in the county. Another is providing grants to homeowners to be able to fix up their homes so that they can stay. I think the only thing is when it comes to developing new affordable housing, the county's behind. They have targets for 2030, and I believe it's about a little over 2,000 a year, according to the Housing Association of Nonprofit Developers. And in 2020 and 2021, they only created 1,000 more units when they're supposed to do 2,000 each year. So it's concerning to see what people will have to do and potentially endure just to stay in the county as these new developments come and materialize. I also think it's important to note that there are other areas that have more policies in place in comparison to PG County. For example, even though in the district, gentrification has become a huge issue, there are a lot of initiatives like inclusionary zoning, which provides people who are in lower income statuses to be able to live in these newer buildings that are being developed because there's a set amount that's allotted to affordable housing. There are programs like that in Montgomery County. I actually have a friend personally who would like to stay in PG County, but was able to find a program that works for her and her budget in Montgomery County and made the decision to move.
And I guess the difference in what you have written about and articulated about Prince George's County is there's this sort of irony at the core of it. It's not like poor people who are unhappy about the lack of social amenities. There's parts of Prince George's County where it's rich people who are unhappy about the lack of social amenities. They're like, we already got the money. Why can't we have the stuff?
Yeah, everyone is affected. And I think it highlights, the differences for Black people specifically. I think constantly we're put in situations where we have to make lemonade out of lemon juice, right? We're not getting the full thing that we should deserve and that people are able to afford. While I do recognize that, the goal is not to make sure that people who have wealth in the county should have everything they need and everyone else shouldn't. But it's interesting to see that collectively we're behind. And that's what we're enduring. And that's the choices we have to sometimes make in order to feel within community, in order to feel safe, in order to feel welcomed.
Olubusayo, thank you for being here.
You too. I appreciate the time.
And that is all for today here on CityCast DC. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, subscribe to our morning newsletter. It's called Hey DC, and it's really good. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye.